how much of an impact is that having on our health versus the actual amino acids and the essential nutrients we find in meats?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, obviously, not poisoning yourself is beneficial, right? I mean,
Amen, brother.
I would tell you to, I mean, you can sort of poison yourself and continuously treat that, which I think a lot of people are doing. So removing the garbage out of our diet has a huge impact, and for some people, that's all you need to do.
Hey guys, this is the Dr. Chapa Wellness Show, and I have a very special guest to talk to us about this big endeavor that seems to be taking over America, and it is the Carnivore Diet. Dr. Shawn Baker, how are you, sir? I'm so glad that you're on the Dr. Chapa Wellness Show and here to educate us and teach us a little bit of how much fun you're having eating well and doing well one bite at a time.
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I do. Just we were talking about off camera here. I got a steak waiting for me when we get done with this.
Well, when when we were texting back and forth.
I'm looking at your board, man. It's making me hungry.
Well, I thought when I texted you earlier, you said, do you need anything before the show? And you said, I need a steak. And I was like, well, I Dr. Chapa delivers, baby, right here. I just need you in my state right now. So I got a little brisket, and I got a little bit of my wellness salt.
Brisket. Yeah, you got some Texas brisket.
And my wife said everything is cooler on a charcuterie board. So here we go.
There you go. That's
so
right. Nice. Yeah, I'll vicariously enjoy it.
Yes, yes. So don't mind the smacking if you hear it in the audio. But hey, listen. So
just don't choke to death on this. That's poor form when you
party foul. Rule number 1. So tell me. So I was reading, through your bio. There's 2 questions right out the gate on your bio. You said in 2015-16 you had some health challenges that really woke you up to the idea of changing your diet or changing your lifestyle. I mean, you were an athlete before then, obviously, but what happened that sparked this carnivore way?
Yeah, I don't know that it was 2015. I think it was probably maybe even a little earlier than that. I mean, I was just, I was kind of in my early mid 40s. I've been an athlete. I've been training weightlifting for 45 years since I was a 13-year-old kid. I'm just about turned 58. And I was just, I just wasn't feeling that good. I just felt like, even though I was performing well as an athlete, I just a hard time sleeping. My blood pressure was creeping up. Probably had some kind of metabolic disease. Didn't have it formally tested, but in retrospect, it's clear that was going on. And I was just like, I'm getting older and I don't like feeling this way. I'm a doctor. Shit, I should know how to fix this stuff. I'm an athlete, but even still, so I had to sort of delve down the diet rabbit hole, or the nutrition rabbit hole, I should say more accurately.
Well, I guess as an athlete, you already were eating seemingly well. I mean, what was your diet in your athletics?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of protein. I ate a lot of protein. I had a shit ton of protein, and I ate a lot of food. I mean, I was a 280-pound man. I mean, I was a big, strong dude. So I had to eat a lot. I mean, I was eating probably 7, 8, sometimes 10,000 calories a day some days. I mean,
oh my.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, I put it to work. I mean, I won world championships at different sports and stuff like that. But
everything from rowing to deadlifting to,
yeah, deadlifting and rowing to Highland Games to track and field to strongman competitions. I did all that stuff, and so but I mean, it was one of those things where it was catching up to me, and I think that's a real problem.
Well, I think that it's a real problem in America. I mean, we're seeing people with all kinds of metabolic disorders. And I know one of the missions that you're on right now is to raise up health coaches and try to teach people this better way of living. Why carnivore? Why did that seem to be how did you think that was the way? Who introduced you to that concept, and why did you choose to roll it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't come into it thinking this is the way. It's just what has sort of come about kind of spontaneously. No, I mean, I was all in on the calories in, calories out, low fat, eat a lot of salad, lean protein. I did that. And in fact, I did lose weight doing that. However, the consequence of that was I was hungry and pissed off all the time. I couldn't stand. I mean, I couldn't live that way. I remember the nurses in in my clinic were saying, man, we really like the fat Dr. Baker a hell of a lot better. You're kind of an ass with this. You're always just, it was just, I was
Hungry.
just constantly hungry. So I couldn't
Yeah.
live that way. And so I kind of evolved through a paleo, low carb, ketogenic sort of journey for about 5 or 6 years after. And then I run into this crazy group of people eating all meat. And I thought they're nuts. I mean, like everybody, these guys are nuts. Why would you just only eat meat? What about scurvy? What about fiber? What about vegetables? That was my thought, just the same as everybody else has. But I had enough morbid curiosity to follow along with these guys on social media and say, what the hell's going on here? And then after like following these guys and asking questions for about a year, I finally did it myself. This is back in 2016, about 8 years ago. And I ended up, did it for a day, did it for a week, and finally I did it for a month. And by the end of the month, I was like, I feel this is the best I could remember feeling in probably a couple decades. I was blown away at how much better I felt. And I thought that was curious. And so, I mean, we had some other people do it. We recorded some data. We saw the consistent results where people are getting. I then got, asked to go on Rogan's podcast, which
Right.
sort of has a huge impact, as you might imagine. And then, from there,
He had a real major, seemingly the exact story you just shared about within 30 days, mental clarity, bursting energy, like more, physical strength and seeming better recovery. I mean, that's what I have been seeing with patients as well. And, what do you, I mean, now that you've done this, I don't know how many thousands of times with people, is there a peak, like a law of diminishing return, where you lose that euphoric kind of benefit? Because there's people that seemingly say that you can't go long-term on a carnivore diet, you can't be sustainable.
Well, I think that I'm not the guy here to tell you that this is the only diet to get healthy and you should all do it for the rest of your life and trying to convert every human on the planet to this. I mean, I think it's a therapeutic tool. I think it can be very effective for a lot of issues. I know there are people, myself included, that can do it long term and have done it long term and don't have any of these supposed issues that are problematic, or at least over the 8 years I've been doing it. Arguably, how long? What do you consider long term? And I know people that have been doing it for many, many decades now. And so, I mean, I think it is doable. Is it necessary? Is it, I'm not religious about it. I'm not like the police where if you eat a blueberry, I'm going to say, oh my God, you're kicked out of this club type of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, I think what you realize is that meat in particular is a tremendous source of nutrition as you're nicely pounding down that brisket. I mean, it provides a kind of a unique level of satiety. It certainly is a very highly bioavailable, accessible form of nutrition. And we think about what is the whole purpose of eating? Why do human beings eat in the first place? I mean,
Fuel.
Outside of the social reasons, the flavor and the enjoyment type thing, but the real reasons we have to eat are because we need essential amino acids. We need some essential fats. We need some source of energy. That could be either fat or carbohydrate. We need vitamins and minerals, and then arguably water. That is the whole rationale for why we eat. And meat provides all that, and I know some people will say, well, there's not as much vitamin C or folate or some of these things. But the reality is, people that do this over time, they're getting their essential needs met.
That'd be an easy question to kind of lead into. And I hope I can remember the next one. But this one happens to be, like, what do you think long-term is? Like you mentioned it earlier. And so I'm 120 days into 100% lion. And so I have absolutely, I'm like you, food is a tool, food is medicine. And believe in that mantra from Da Vinci that, the doctor of the future will use food as medicine, not medication or pharma. And so 120 days in, at 90 days, I'm still seeing my body do things, reset, I think, metabolic set points. And not that I had major health issues before. I thought I felt pretty good, but not like this. This is different. What do you think a long-term run for somebody would be to really know this is working or not working?
Attempting this diet, I usually tell them give it a 90-day trial, because I think that's just the adjustment period for a lot of people. So you get there and then you can kind of say, well, what do we need? I can tell you from observation of now thousands of patients, many people will continue to see benefits like improvements in their overall health conditions for up to several years. I mean, and it might be that, we've accumulated crap stored in our tissues and we have to slowly replace that with better nutrition. I know some people are worried about oxidized, lipids and things like that. And they tend to have pretty long half-lives in the terms of months and even some years. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think you can continue to improve. Now, at my age, and well, not my age, but at my time frame, 8 years, and I've probably gotten most of the benefits I'm going to get from the diet. And now it just allows me to do other things. I can continue to perform as an athlete and continue to improve myself, get faster and stronger and jump higher, even
That's
in my
awesome.
late 50s. Whereas had I been on another diet, those things would probably not be likely for me. I mean, I think it would be very difficult. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think long term, I mean, depends on, what terms we're talking about. But I mean, if we're
Well,
worried
let's
about
just
what are the
say,
concerns?
what if it was metabolic syndrome? What if it was
Yeah, well, I mean,
diabetes?
I think that's something that can resolve itself within weeks to months, quite honestly, for months.
Cool.
Some people it takes a little bit longer, but if we're looking at, what are the concerns? Well, am I going to get scurvy? Well, that's something that's going to take place within 1 to 2 months. And I don't
Yeah.
have scurvy, so I've known 8 years, so that's not happening. You can look at things like uh, lack of fiber is going to cause this horrifying destruction of your bowel because you don't fuel this microbiome. It's going to eat your colon. It's just going to go crazy. This is what we're told. Well, that would have happened within the first couple months, and that hasn't happened. I mean, so what we're left with right at this point is you're going to die early, or you're going to get cancer in 20 years, or you're going to get heart disease. And that's really, I mean, you literally, that's like looking at reading horoscopes. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
the evidence that would support that is so incredibly weak. It's just like this is all the critics have left. It's like, well, no one got scurvy, no one died right away, no one dropped dead of heart attacks, no one's getting, bowel obstructions or anything like that. So now we have to kick the curb farther down the road and say, well, we think it could shorten your life, and that, like I said, that's like trying to predict the weather.
Well,
Is
I
it going to
mean,
rain? Is it going to rain on March 16th this year? I don't know.
I've
Maybe it
been
will. Maybe
doing
it won't.
blood work every 30 days through the process. And my blood work is really minus my stomach acids being a little bit low, but I could supplement with some digestive enzymes or something. But one of the patients came in yesterday and I just found it interesting. Her hiccup was, well, I read something somewhere. Now, of course, Dr. Google is always questionable on sourcing. But at the end of the day, immunity. She was worried that carnivore would wreck a person's immune system. But I really struggled with that. And I was like, yeah, I've not seen that, with the people that have done it in my office, that I've seen on, the interwebs. And so what have you seen in thousands of cases with respect to what do you think happens on a carnivore diet and looking at immune system strength?
Well, I think it improves, quite honestly. I mean, if we accept that about 70% of our immune system resides in our gut, I mean, the gut is our largest interface with the external environment, not our skin, but our gut because of the surface area. And most people don't realize it, but from our esophagus to our large intestine is external to our body. Our gut health often improves and almost, with very rare exception, generally gets better on carnivore. And I think that impacts the immune system. We see autoimmunity all the time get better. And obviously the autoimmune issues involve
Of
the
the
immune
world.
system, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's another example. I mean, anecdotally, we got people saying I get sick less often. I am less affected by things like seasonal allergies. Again, the immune system will have a role in there. So I think the reality is that, I think as you generally become a more healthy person, all systems work better, whether it's your immune system, digestive system, your central nervous system, your cardiovascular system. So, and I think that's a product of good nutrition. And I just think this is good nutrition for a human being.
Well, so, I've always taught that the thing that most diets have in common, like the paleo diet or the Mediterranean diet or a carnivore, keto, or Atkins diet, they essentially take away sugar and the processed foods,
Mm,
right? So
yeah.
how much of an impact is that having on our health versus the actual amino acids and the essential nutrients we find in meats?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, obviously, not poisoning yourself is beneficial, right? I mean, that would, I mean,
Amen,
no
brother.
one would tell you to, I mean, you can sort of poison yourself and continuously treat that, which I think a lot of people are doing. So removing the garbage out of our diet it has a huge impact, and for some people, that's all you need to do. I mean, I don't think you need to go farther. But I can't deny the fact that meat is just a superior fuel. I mean, when we think about the things I mentioned, what you need to do, what you need to consume, the essential amino acids and fats, you get that from meat in a very bioavailable form. Other forms of trying to do that are less efficient. I will just say that if we look at all the creatures on planet Earth that have ever swam in the oceans or flown in the sky or crawled on the ground, the vast majority of them, something like 70%, maybe 75%, have chosen a carnivore strategy for nutrition because it's just more simple, it's more efficient. You think about it, if I were to build a brick house, it'd be nice if I had some bricks,
Right.
right? That'd make things easier. If I got a bunch of straw and mud, yeah, I can do it, but it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more effort, and that's the difference between consuming animal cells. I mean,
And
remember, we're
maintenance.
made up of animal cells, right? I mean, I've cut into a lot of human beings. We're made out of red meat, to be honest. So when we're made up of animal cells are made of certain building materials, and they have certain needs. Where can you get them? Well, you can get them from more animal cells. I mean, it's just quite, I know it sounds sort of simplistic, but that's the reality of the situation. Whereas if you eat a plant, I mean, cellulose, we're not made of cellulose. We can't even break it down, quite honestly. We have to depend on a microbiome, which may or may not be dialed in to do that. And it's hard to absorb that stuff. And so, and the ratios, if we look at like the essential amino acids we need certain amounts of them in certain ratios. Oh, by the way, they just happen to be in the right amounts in animal products. Well, is that just coincidence or is that by design? So it's when you're trying to cobble together a plant-based diet just to get the protein alone, you've got to start mixing and matching these things in the right ratios. It's like if I were at a factory and I wanted to build cars and I said, well, I've got plenty of tires, I've got plenty of vinyl seats, but I got a shortage of motors. I only got a few of them. But you're only going to be able to build a few cars because you got to have all the essential parts there. And this is what the plant-based diet kind of does for you. It's like I can get the stuff. I might have to overconsume in order to get those things met. And that's why a lot of people find that a carnivore diet is very satiating. It provides tremendous satiety as well. It's because I'm getting all the things I need. Whereas if I'm eating a diet where I'm not getting all the essential things at the right time, I'm hungry. I'm constantly trying to catch up and eat.
But I think too, if you're like in this intermittent fasting or kind of fasting window, or you're eating only one meal a day, if we do kind of go back in history, if we did find ourselves, blessed to find a piece of meat to eat, that would probably sustain us many more days if it was many days between meal 1 and meal 3 or meal 2. And so, I mean, obviously the substance of, that Thor talked about. I need sustenance. We need meat to stay healthy. I think is power, like you said, a powerful resource for the body as a whole. And vegetables, yeah, you're hungry 30 minutes later, even if after a 5-pound salad.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing. The 5-pound salad, you got to eat a bunch, and people say, well, I get to eat all this volume of food and stretch my gut out, and that's true, and it does provide some level of satiety based on the mechanoreceptors in our gut. But you're not absorbing most of that. And so end up, all these big expensive organic salads that you might eat, half that nutrition is going into the toilet. I mean, that's a waste of money. Food's pretty expensive these days.
And it takes 45 minutes to an hour to swallow 15 pounds worth of a salad. I've tried it. I mean, and it takes forever to make it. So you're 100% right. Because I think that's
not very efficient. So it's an inefficient way to do that for sure.
Well, I know that the populace as a whole is really trying to wrap their head around what is the value of a carnivore diet, and is it sustainable, and does it, is it going to cause colon cancer later on down the way? And when people come at you with these conversations and questions, I mean, do you have just a simple hey, here's this answer for that person that is trying to justify it to their family? Because I think sometimes people are peer pressured, even by their close loved ones, not to do something that you and I believe is good for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, point by point, if we look at colon cancer, for instance, World Health Organization 2015 IARC declares unprocessed red meat class 2 type 2 carcinogen, right? And so that decision has had a lot of people saying, "Oh my God, red meat's going to cause cancer." That committee that did that, it was not a unanimous decision. They were complaining that they threw away a lot of the data that would not support their findings. They had a number of people involved in that process that were ideologically vegetarian, vegan, so on and so forth. Bill Gates funded the study in many ways as one of the biggest contributors to the World Health Organization. He's also heavily invested in plant-based meats and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of that. But more importantly, a number of subsequent studies since that study came out, it's particularly the Nutri-X Consortium in 2019, led by Gordon Guyatt, one of the most well-respected scientists in the world, basically said there's no evidence. There's no strong evidence to suggest this. The data that they drew these conclusions on were based on basically weak epidemiology. Washington University study that came out in 2022, same thing. All this science saying red meat is going to cause cancer, heart disease, diabetes is based on incredibly shoddy, weak science. And that's what we have right now. And so like we go through colorectal cancer, for instance, if we say, well, what are the risk factors for colorectal cancer? And even if you were to accept the World Health Organization's finding that said it's a 17% relative risk increase, which is tiny. I mean, it takes you from 4% risk to 5% risk. It's less than a 1% absolute risk. And then you look at the other factors that go into that. Well, what else drives colorectal cancer? Obesity does. Inflammation does. Sugar, diabetes does.
Alcohol. Anything that converts to poison in the body.
Right. Right. And then particularly things like inflammatory bowel disease. Inflammatory bowel disease, it's not a 17% relative risk. It's a 3,000% relative risk. And what happens to people with inflammatory bowel disease when they go carnivore? Their inflammatory bowel disease goes away for most of them. So, I mean, it's like, how do we add up all these various risk factors? And if you got one tiny one that says it's more risk, and you got 20 big ones that say it's less risk,
it's worth the risk.
Seems like it's going to balance out. So I like I said, at the end of the day, you try and see what happens. And as you were doing, I mean, I applaud you for at least experimenting, saying, "Hey, let me try it for myself."
I would say that. So I'm thankful that I've had, I learned from my practice. I had a mentor tell me one time that if you learn from your practice, you'll never go out of business. If you learn from your craft, you'll never go, broke. And I had a patient 8 years ago. I had I had two patients specifically that just in the last year and a half, both of them completely transformed. And I said, you know what? Listen, I've known about this for a long time. I'm a big detox fanatic, and I love food as medicine, like I said earlier. But at the end of the day, I haven't gone 100% lion. Got to give it the old college try. And, and I've been feeling like I'm trying to do the good science of every 30 days checking in with myself and seeing what the blood work looks like, sending it to my friends to evaluate. And I'm pretty excited to see that, not only am I up and kicking, I'm training hard. I'm outperforming, people that like to train with me as much as I can, that healthy competition, and it makes me feel good inside. So I want patients to hear from you, just how much this has changed their life. But I also am excited that you said it's not forever, and it's not something that everybody has to do to get healthy. Essentially, it's a tool that moves a person from point A to point B. And so like if you were transitioning somebody to next level post, carnivore, what would be a next step coming off, quote unquote, the lion version of carnivore?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I would like to see that they've reached their goals. I mean, because the whole point of a therapeutic tool is to put whatever you're trying to deal with and correct that problem. So assuming that's happened, sufficient time has passed, 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year for some people. Then I just tell people, hey, okay, now you can do what you want to. Some people are so happy that they don't want to change. There's like, man, it's so easy. It's so simple.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the fact that I don't have to think about meals and plan meals, and I can eat once or twice a day and I'm done. They love that. I mean, there's certainly those folks out there, and I'm one of them. But, I say, well, look, Probably, we could argue about what our ancestors may or may not have eaten. I mean, clearly they weren't eating Twinkies, Doritos, and Snickers bars. I mean,
Oh, come on.
that just, I would argue that if they were available, we would have. If you had a tree that produced Snickers bars, we'd be
Heck
like,
yeah.
hell yeah, let me.
Well, remember in the Bible, they were sticking their hands in honey, man. They were trying to get what they could get when they could get it.
Right. So we would do that. I mean, we're driven to do that. But I mean, if we would just say, okay, now we're going to let's say food was part of the problem, and we've eliminated all the variables. We kind of brought you down to just maybe meat, things like that, and now we're going to introduce things. And so you have to be sort of, I think you have to go small and slow. You say, hey, I'm going to add. Let me add some strawberries back, and I like strawberries. They're pretty good. They're generally a whole food. They don't have an ingredients label. I try to avoid things that have ingredient labels, particularly when we get into the ultra processed. I think that's just off the table. Just don't eat that garbage and you'll do yourself a lot better. But I mean, there's no reason you could not say, hey, I want to start including a little bit of whole, plant foods in my diet. And you just, you consume a little bit, see how you do, give it a couple of days, try it again. And if you get 3-4 times in a row, I got no problem with it, then hey, that's back on your menu. And you just little by little over a period of time, it doesn't take that long. I mean, to be honest, I mean, probably most of us could be quite happy with just a handful of foods for almost indefinitely, with an occasional, whatever. Occasionally you go off the rails, but I think for the most part, and that's how humans existed for most of our time. I mean, we have a grocery store that has 5,000 different products in there. That didn't exist 100 years ago. I mean, you go to Kansas in the middle of January, and they got some kind of meat, they got some eggs, they got some milk, they might have some flour, they might have some sugar, they might have a few vegetables and fruits. But that's about it. That was a grocery store 100 years ago.
Well,
now we have, now we've got blue food and pink food and green food and whatever, Captain Crunch flavored
and stuff that can last 15 years due to the amount of preservatives packed in it. It's like, we use formaldehyde to preserve people. You're essentially eating versions of preservatives, and with the idea that it's going to preserve you, but it doesn't do it in a healthy way. It does it in a toxic way for which your body can't function. So you posted this morning that, how many eggs can a person eat in a setting? How many eggs have you consumed today? Or would you, if you had to answer your own question, how many eggs would you consume in a setting?
Well, I mean, I don't, for me, I'm a big guy, right? It's not even worth it for me to eat under 6 eggs. I mean, that's just like the minimum. I mean, I'm not even getting a pan.
I hope you got some chickens in the backyard.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's my neighbor does, fortunately, but I eat anywhere between 6 to 2 dozen in one go. I mean, I've done that. I mean, but again, 6'5", I'm 250 pounds.
Sure. No, it's just fun, right? Because
pretty big. Yeah.
I always say that the egg is the incredible edible egg, the perfect balance of what we need.
It grows and it can grow an entire organism with that egg. That egg yolk is food for that little baby chicken, and that's what they can survive on. I mean, for the answer to that question, which I posted last night, I had 8. I just had 8 for dinner. That was a nice little dinner for me.
Nice. Oh, now, okay. So for you, or for a person with metabolic disorders, what about like the pregnant mother? What about for young developing kids? Because you just kind of opened up a nice little thought with our young developing obese population that is completely off the rails. How would you, promote to the pregnant mom and or the younglings that we're raising today?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I don't know that children need to do a fully carnivorous diet unless, I mean, there's some kids, maybe a young kid gets diagnosed with Crohn's disease or something like that. And I think that becomes more of a viable option. Kids have to grow. I mean, that's their job. I mean, they have to be in a caloric surplus. They have to be able to take in a lot of nutrition. I think animal products are vital in that time frame. I think you should feed them a lot of that. They should be eating a lot of meat and eggs and milk and so on and so forth. That's pretty good for most kids. Now, what you add to that, and this is a parenting hack. I got 4 kids, and I would cook for them on Saturday, and I would make them bacon and eggs, and I might make them a bunch of, just high fat, lots of animal stuff, and I'd feed them up, and I'd make them eat all of it. The reason I did that is because I didn't have to hear from them for the next 6 hours, as opposed to, Daddy, I'm hungry, and you have 4 people on 4 different schedules telling me they're hungry every 20 minutes. So, I mean, for that reason alone, but I mean, you need to make sure those kids are getting enough nourishment to grow. And one of the problem is, again, this problem with the fact that 70% of the pediatric population's diet is ultra processed food, which provides very little nutrition. It keeps them hungry all the time, so they're constantly having to snack and eat, and they don't develop that correctly, but they get fat, but they are not developing in a way that they're supposed to. They're not getting the nutrition. They're filling out their fat stores, but they're not maybe developing their brain appropriately. They're not developing some of these other structures. So I think with kids, animal products are wonderful. They're essential in my view. You should be consuming lots and lots, and this should be the focus of the meal. Particularly very early on, and then as time goes by, and then it's just providing the energy that they need so that they can fuel their activities. But you got to keep them.
I have a book at home called "Eat Like a Dinosaur," and it's basically to parents to educate kids on how to eat. And it's got this cool green label cover with a big brontosaurus or something, which is interesting because I think brontosauruses, my memory serves, were more omnivore, but it was like eat like a dinosaur.
I think they're vegetarian.
Yeah, for sure.
Brontosaurus, yeah.
But if you look at all the foods in there, they're all essentially paleo style, more heavier protein meat, and I've noticed for me, 120 days in, my kids just naturally want to eat off of what I am eating. So when I make a brisket,
let me just. There's an interesting study. It was a mammalian weaning study, and they did comparative anatomy and comparative development studies, and they looked at brain size versus breastfeeding time. Comparing all these mammals, and humans have very large brains and a relatively short breastfeeding period compared to, say, other primates. For instance, an orangutan will breastfeed for about 8 years. And they have a very small brain relative to us. And the reason for that is their post-weaning diet is a bunch of leaves and plants, and they can't develop a big brain on that. And so given what humans would have had available to them as far as energy density to develop the brain we have, the models predict very clearly that we would have a more carnivorous approach to nutrition, particularly focusing on animal fat, because that's what we need to develop that big brain size. Remember, our brain is primarily composed of fat. So kids need that. Now, the reason we can get away with not doing that today is because we've hacked the nutrition. We've turned ultra-processed, highly absorbable, grain products, which would not have been available to a wild human back in the day, into something that's fairly highly absorbable. So we've changed the surface area so we can absorb more energy. But the reality is, in nature, what we could, we couldn't get much energy from leaves. Fruit would be too unreliable. Animal fat would be what it takes to provide that great, dense source of energy to grow that big brain after we wean, from breastfeeding.
Yeah, and two, if you go back and look at like bison and cows, they were raised on the land that was rich in nutrient and good soil, and they would find that what they were able to eat with all their internal working system, there was rich omega-3s and 9s in the soil back in the day, where today it's a lot of omega-6s because we're not giving these animals variety that they would have had if they were truly free range. And so I think that too, we were getting a different type of fat compared to where we're the fats that people are pushing into and pressing into today.
Well, I mean, particularly when we start looking into the industrial oils, the canola oils and the soybean oils, which are very much a different fatty acid composition.
Yeah, it completely deteriorates the body and not builds it up. So, tell us about your book. So you wrote a book 2019, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so
it's 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's pretty awesome. Tell us about like what people can really expect out of your book and where they can get it. And then,
so the book is called The Carnivore Diet by myself, Shawn Baker MD. I mean, I wrote it in 2019. I mean, it still holds up today. I don't think I would have changed just about it. There's a few more studies I could have added in there subsequent to that. But I mean, the basic premise of why, the rationale, the science behind it, how to correctly implement it, in my view, has stood up very well. It's sold a bunch of copies. People really enjoyed it. They use it as kind of a reference material for this particular thing. Amazon bookstores sell it still. It's been translated into several languages. So it's like I said, I think it holds the test of time. When I go back and look at it, I'm like, I wrote it for you don't have to have a significant, strong science background to understand. I mean, there's plenty of science in there, but I wanted to write it so it's accessible to as many people as possible. So yeah, I mean, it's now an audiobook, which is kind of funny. It took them 4 years to get the audio version out, which made me laugh, but it finally came out, and yeah,
Well,
it's
it's
still
just
doing
another.
quite well.
Yeah, it's going to be another 5 years of impact that you get to make and leave a legacy. I mean, that's a really exciting thing to be one of the greats that have influenced our culture in a really powerful way. Dr. Atkins did it, and other movers and shakers, and I mean, you and Chappie are out there, and y'all are leading the charge on this and inspiring people to have a little curiosity, a little courage, and
Yeah.
and to ride the wave and let it happen. And so we appreciate you doing that. And so how else, because you have other platforms too, where can people find you and follow you and be a part of your world?
Yeah, so I'm quite prolific on social media. I'm on Twitter, or I guess it's now called X. S Baker MD is where I'm there. I'm on Instagram at Shawn, SHAWN, Baker 1967. Got a YouTube channel, Shawn Baker MD. I've got Facebook page. I think we've got a TikTok channel, the same thing. So I'm on all these different social media platforms, and I'm pretty much every day there putting some stuff out, trying to raise, kind of stir the pot a little bit, kind of get people discussing things. Sometimes I piss off some people, but
Hey,
that's just
you know what? If you're not a little bit polar and you're not pissing somebody off, you're probably not making a difference. So again,
right.
once again, round of applause. We applaud you for that. And, we're going to have you back on the show here real soon. And, I just want to say thank you because, again, you are a, true trench warrior for wellness and health. And I'm glad you have that cool shirt on that, it says ask hard questions, because I think we need people to be able to handle, the hard question and not get upset if we do step on your toes because we don't agree. And so on the Dr. Shaw Wellness Show, we're the same way, man. We give people alternatives to drugs and surgery, teach people how to live better, be better, one bite at a time. And thank you for sharing your message with this audience. Do you have any last carnivore words for the person that's either embarking, that's midway on their journey towards metabolic reset, or somebody that's going the distance like you have?
Well, I mean, I think that you have to realize that your health is very much something you have a lot of control over. A lot of us tend to want to outsource this discussion to our physicians and have them take care of it. But as a physician, I can tell you, I mean, I would get 15 minutes with somebody maybe once or twice a year. I just can't have as much skin in the game as you might. And so you've got to live with it, the consequence of that 24/7. You're the only one that lives in your own body,
Come on.
that lives in your skin. So you've got to take a lot of the responsibility upon yourself and don't get disempowered. And this is the thing that I think the healthcare system has done. It's done a wonderful job of disempowering people. You get some chronic disease. Hey, doc, why did this happen? I don't know. Bad luck, genes. We don't know. What do I do about it? Here, take this pill the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That is
Bad
depressing, disempowering, and it doesn't need to be that way. So you can through some of these other things, lifestyle, diet, nutrition, whatever, there is a tremendous amount you can do. And I think the problem that physicians a lot of times will say, well, there's no point, it doesn't work, is because they've just been giving people the wrong advice for years and watching it fail and then coming to the conclusion that it doesn't matter. Here's your pill.
That's right.
That's the problem, right?
Well, I want to say that might be the best part. And I'm so glad it came at the end of the show, because it's your life, your health, your choice, and you have to take the bull by the horns. So, man, that is a absolute hoot shoot. Let's get on it, man. That's awesome. So on the Dr. Chapa Wellness Show, I want to say thank you to Shawn Baker. Definitely follow him on all his social media platforms. Get a hold of his book either on audio or in picture form, hard print, and let it be something that's on your counter that you're using, and give it the old college try. Go see what this thing's all about and test an idea, and ideas come. It's your life, your health, your choice, and you can do it, and we believe in you. So thank y'all so much, and we'll be in touch soon. See you next time.